Hello, I'm Lori Alvarez, and I welcome you to Real Estate with Soul, the podcast. This is where I will share my story, knowledge, wisdom, and the legacy in real estate, and my family, all boldly wrapped up in one with you. So let's get started. Hey, it's Lori Alvarez. I am so excited today. I have a fantastic guest on, someone who knows so much more than I do about 1031 exchanges. I've listened to him over and over again on various podcasts. He's been on various YouTube shows, and I'm just excited to introduce Mr. Dave Foster. Dave, hi, how are you?
Hey, Lori, thank you. It's great to be here in honor of our hurricane party. Since I'm located in St. Petersburg, Florida, we're having an Elsa party today. So we'll let her join our interview.
Excellent. That sounds like no fun. I've been in a hurricane. Never doing it again.
Yeah. You know, I spent a few years in Key West where we all got jaded and we judged hurricanes. The bars didn't break out the 2-for-1 specials until it was category 3. So I think we're okay for today.
Excellent. I was long ago, Dave, I was in a category 5 hurricane in Mexico, Cabo San Lucas. And it was the most miserable. I'll take a California earthquake over your hurricanes all day long. It was scary.
There's an argument to get them done quick, isn't there? Yep.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me first, Dave, when did you come into the business? I heard 97. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, that's about right. There was a bunch of things that happened just right then that kind of changed the course of my life. Well, forever, I guess, as it's gone. So in 1997, my wife and I were in Denver, Colorado, and we were both involved in some pretty high-profile, high-pressure careers. And the first major thing that happened was that we had our first child. And that just changed life totally, where instead of the greatest commodity being what you can acquire, your status, position, everything, all of a sudden, all we wanted to do was throw out the TV and just stare at this little bundle of joy. And we realized the greatest commodity we had in life was time. And it was the time with that one. And we said, oh my gosh, we got to start rethinking life. And maybe it's time to jump off the corporate train and find a way to live that lets us maximize our moments with our children. So that was event number 1. Event number 2 was we arrived at the crazy decision, like a few billion other people, that maybe investing in real estate would be a great way to do that. So I bought my first property just like so many of your clients have. I went and bought a duplex. I fixed it up. I sold it. I cashed the check. I was fat and sassy. And then my accountant called me in preparation for the taxes and reminded me that I had a silent partner named Uncle Sam. And he was going to make about as much as I did. So event number 1 was happy. Event number 2, not so much so. But also in 1997, a very significant thing happened. There was a court case that was settled where the IRS had lost a lawsuit over the conduct and process of this thing called a 1031 exchange that had been a statute for 100 years, but it was not user-friendly. And they just lost this lawsuit and had to totally redo all of the regulations for how it was done. So that now, from 1997, it was going to be user-friendly for regular investors like me. And what the 1031 exchange does is it lets you sell investment property and, using a process, buy replacement investment property, and you don't have to pay. You get to indefinitely defer paying the tax on the appreciation and the depreciation recapture indefinitely. So event number 1 was awesome. Event number 2, not so much. Event number 3 changed my course because it showed us how we could use 1031 exchanges to keep the tax dollars working for us. And of course, at that time, I had some good friends. By the way, do you know how to tell who your really good friends are, Lauren?
Oh, how?
They're the ones that feel free to incessantly mock you and at the same time watch your back. Friends of mine said, Dave, you mean you didn't know about this? We're starting a business. Would you like in? I said, absolutely. So for the last 22 years now, I've been working with investors and doing 1031 exchanges for myself, and I have yet to pay a penny in capital gains tax.
I love that. I love that. I heard a lot of that in your story when I was doing my my research with regards to your kind of your history and the things that you've done, and it sounds so exciting. I mean, I heard your boat story. You lived on a boat with your wife and your kids for so long, right? I was like,
For
talk
10 years.
about living a life of design.
Exactly. Well, first of all, we bought the boat with tax deferred income. We were able to buy a boat basically with the government's dollars that we had converted into ours. So that's one of the really cool parts of the story. Is what we started to do was to position ourselves. We would sell a piece of real estate, buy a replacement real estate, use it for investment, and periodically we would then later convert that property into our primary residence. Now, the rules for primary residence, as you're well aware, are very advantageous. If you live in a property for 2 out of the 5 years prior to sale, then as a married couple, we could take the first $500,000 of profit tax-free. So when we were thinking, of course, I guess you want to hear the funny thing about the boat? I'm from Kansas. My wife is from Minnesota. We lived in Denver. Tell me where an ocean figures in there. No clue how we got the bug, but we got the bug. So we knew we had to move to an ocean. So first we took our portfolio using the 1031 exchange without paying tax and moved all of our Denver portfolio into Connecticut. And then when we moved to Connecticut, our portfolio was already waiting for us, and we moved into one of those properties. So as we left Colorado, we took a tax-free sale. We did the same thing in Connecticut. And then when we realized that the biggest difference between Connecticut and Florida is there's ocean both places, but in one of them it's cold still, and the other has warm water. So we got out of Dodge in Connecticut, moved to Colorado, to Florida, and did the same thing. And so at each time we were converting properties to our primary residence, taking the proceeds then, 2 years later, tax-free. And that's what we used were those tax-free dollars to buy the boat. And then we lived on it and raised all 4 of our boys for 10 years. It was awesome.
Wow, you have 4 boys as well. I have 4 sons. And it's a crazy busy life with 4 sons. So I can only imagine 4 sons on a boat. Well, I mean, what the heck? Like, whew, that's a lot
once you're
there.
past number 2, the thing you realize is you're outnumbered. So the game's over at that point. So add on as many as you want. But did you ever do timeouts for your boys? Like if they misbehaved or something, did you put them in timeouts?
Of course, yes.
Yeah. So our timeout was that we would put them in the dinghy behind the boat. So we didn't have to listen to him yell. It's like, time out for you, get in the dinghy. Good thing those years are over. I'd probably be in trouble with child services. I don't know.
I totally get it. So let's get into the details of a 1031 exchange. And I really want to talk about that from the perspective of like, I don't even know what the heck that is, right? Because we have so many people who end up, as you mentioned, accidental landlords, like, oh, I inherited mom and dad's house, or oh, I kept my first house and bought another house. What is a 1031 exchange? And who is someone that
Right.
would
So,
take advantage and why?
got it. Boy, I mean, you hit the sweet spot right there because the couple of things that we know in today's demographic, we're getting married later in life. We're taking the time to establish our careers,
Mhm.
and then we combine households. Or, the first marriage doesn't work out. We're single for a while. We get married again. We join life partners. And you're right. We all of a sudden become the accidental landlord. By the way, how do you know, or can you tell me which of the houses the couple always moves into and which one always becomes the investment property? Do you know? They
I
always,
think it's the hers.
absolutely, they always move into hers because it's the only one that's clean. Exactly. So those people are investors. And after a few years of drinking the Kool Aid of revenue, it becomes pretty comfortable. It's like, wow, I can make money simply by owning real estate. And so the 1031 exchange is what allows you to sell that real estate and go buy your new real estate while indefinitely deferring the tax on that you'd normally have to pay. And what's really significant about that, Lori, there's some strategy we'll talk about that's awesome. But the true significance is what happens over the course of 20 years of doing that. Because let's say you had a $100,000 gain, and between state and federal and everything, you'd have tax of $20,000. Well, you get to keep that $20,000 and invest it for yourself. Now, if you can make 10% on your money, how much are you making off of that every year? $2,000.
Right.
Well, I don't know about you, but that's real money.
Yeah.
So after your first year, you've still got the
Yes.
20, and now you've got the 22. And then you make two more, and it starts to multiply. Because from that point forward, anytime you again sell your property and do a 1031 exchange, you get to keep deferring it. So it is a way of, I'll use the word compounding. And it's compound interest that Albert Einstein called the eighth wonder of the world. So the 1031 exchange acts for the investor exactly like your IRA or your 401k does, but it does it outside of your 401k. It gives you the same power of making money on that deferred tax as long as you live. And we've actually got an Excel spreadsheet that we've shared with people where in 4 transactions over 20 years, the difference between an investor who pays the tax and invests the difference versus the investor who defers the tax for all 4 of those transactions, at the end of 20 years, that investor has almost $9 million more real estate than the investor who pays the tax, simply because they're able to use the deferred tax to go and leverage and buy more real estate. So, I mean, that's who it's for, is anybody that wants to capture and harness compound interest.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you share that. Plus the opportunity, right, for you to grow your wealth over time. So let's get back to that because there's a little thing that, so you in the transaction, you're what's called the, say it for me, intermediary, right?
Qualified intermediary, right. Yeah.
Excellent.
Exactly.
Thank you. These technical words. So tell people why they need one of those.
Yeah, it's very simple. The IRS requires it. I have a job because the government requires that you use someone like me.
Yeah.
They don't, again, remember, they lost a lawsuit. So they're not particularly happy, but they have to let you do it. So the very first thing they said was, we're going to make sure we control this. So they make you use a third party such as myself. They don't let you touch the money. So that's why the QI has to be involved prior to the sale. So that's that's the first and foremost. Now, beyond that, there's several rules you have to follow. There's some timing. You've only got 45 days after the date of your sale to identify your potential replacements. So it's not a lot of time. And you have a total of 180 days to close. Now, that's usually not so much of a problem. It's that 45-day period that'll trip you up. So we tell people you want to be shopping even before you close your sale. And if you find something, get it under contract, because it can be under contract whenever you want. You just can't close on it until you close the sale. Now, strategically,
I like that.
These things. I'm sorry, go right ahead.
No, go finish. Please finish.
Well, I was going to say, strategically, there's a couple of things that can really be a benefit to you. First of all, any kind of investment real estate can be sold and replaced with any other type of investment real estate in any other location. So, I know you're out in California, which has always been appreciation heavy. I mean, that's how you make money. But nobody seems to be able to make money owning rentals because they have to pay so much and rents don't keep up. So at a certain point in the market, when the market first started, oh gosh, you'll remember this, like 2011, 2012, you could pick up properties near you very cheaply, relatively, right? Well, you got those and you rode the appreciation train. But now you've got tons of equity, but you're not making any cash flow. So the idea then would be to sell that and go position yourself maybe in a different market, maybe something in the Midwest, maybe something in Austin, Arizona, Nevada, wherever, where you can get more dollars per your asset cost and get more dollars per square foot. So you go from one very expensive asset to several less expensive assets. So you're increasing the size of your portfolio using your pent-up equity as down payments for your leverage. What an opportunity that is.
Yeah, I love that. And I asked you this question this weekend when we connected, right? I have a rental property and I want to buy something else like commercial, right?
That's exactly right.
Is that possible?
That's exactly right. And that's a very common move because, again, just like everything, the market has a life and the market speaks to you where there's certain inequities. So the move from residential into commercial can be very advantageous, especially when you can use the 1031 and do it without paying the tax. A couple other things that are really common is to go from full-time rentals into vacation rentals. You get to a certain point where you think, I'd like to enjoy some of this. Well, instead of cashing out, paying the tax, use the 1031 and go buy a vacation rental in Mammoth or Big Bear or wherever and rent it out so you're generating income. Use it some yourself for personal use. That's perfectly fine. But you keep the tax deferred so the dollars are working for you instead of simply going to the government. It's another thing that's related to that is converting properties, like my wife and I did. Periodically convert a property to your primary residence. And when you do that, now I got to give you a caveat, because when we did this prior to 2008, we got to take the entire amount of gain tax-free. And it was awesome, but somewhere in a break room in the IRS offices, I'm pretty sure there's a post picture of mine of me on it, because in 2008 they changed the law and now you won't be able to get everything tax-free, but you'll get to prorate it. The time you lived in it and the time it was investment. So you can actually turn some of the deferred tax into tax-free. And we see a lot of people doing this towards the end of their careers. They'll maybe decide, yeah, I want to end up moving to Phoenix to retire. Okay. On your way out the door, before you do that, sell your last LA rental and go buy a nice rental in Phoenix. Use it for investment for a year or so. And then when you're ready to retire, sell your LA house. That money's tax-free. That's the start of your retirement. Where are you going to move?
Yes.
Simply convert that former investment property into your primary residence. That conversion does not create a taxable event. But all of a sudden now you're living free in a tax-deferred house. And that's an incredible opportunity, especially if you're the kind of person like one of my clients that has 3 identical condos side by side on St. Pete Beach. His retirement plan, he's going to move into the first one. And I asked his wife, I said, how are you guys going to know when the time to sell it is? She said, Dave, when it's time to redecorate, it's time to sell. I said, okay, fair enough. So they're going to live in it for at least 2 years, and then they're going to sell that, and they'll get to take a portion of that gain tax-free. They'll pay some tax on it.
Right.
Where do you think they're going to move?
Yes.
Next door. Which, if you've got good neighbors, you're going to cut down on moving costs too. So it's kind of a win-win-win. And then they'll live there. So throughout their retirement, they're going to be continually turning deferred tax into tax-free simply by where they live and how they position that using the 1031 exchange.
Yeah. I love that story because that's something that I contemplate, right? Like one day I want to have that beach house. And so why not make the investment sooner and rent it out until I'm ready to occupy the residence, right? Because I can occupy it if I choose to at some point, correct?
That's exactly right. That does not create a taxable event.
Mm-hmm. And then the opportunity for me to have a tenant pay down that property in the meantime, like I'm going to have a paid for investment property that is now on the beach that is my primary residence at some point. I mean, I see nothing but win-wins in that.
Isn't that awesome? And if you've got enough runway, you can make this part of your planning for your entire life and deliberately, and you'll never pay tax. And I think this is the point where, can I give you and your listeners the 4 Ds of 1031 investing? Are you ready? You may or may not need a pen. I don't know.
Ready, give it to us.
But here they are. Defer. Defer.
Defer.
Defer.
Defer.
And die.
Defer.
And here's why those are so key. Yeah, right? Here's why those are so key. Because when you buy a piece of real estate, it's building equity for you, isn't it? It's gaining value. You're getting the tax write-off of depreciation.
Yeah.
As long as you own that property, you will never pay tax on the gain, even though it's building for you. Just like a stock appreciates in value, but you don't pay tax on it until you sell it. As long as any time you sell that property, you do a 1031 exchange, you will never pay the tax on the gain or the depreciation recapture. So as long as any time you change the use of the property into a vacation rental, you use some, into your primary residence, into a passive commercial property, you will never pay the tax. And then, of course, that final D which nobody likes, but it's kind of inevitable, so we got to talk about it. You die.
Yes.
And under current law, if you die holding a piece of property, your heirs get that property at what is called a stepped up basis, which means they inherit it as if they paid market value for it on the day you die. So all of that deferred capital gains tax disappears for your heirs. I mean, what an incredible opportunity for a last legacy gift.
It does.
To your children, courtesy of the U.S. government. But Lori, you got 4 sons. Be careful when you tell them about this. You don't want one of them deciding to go to med school just in case.
I get it. And that is part of the legacy. Is obviously I'm in real estate and I want to leave the real estate to my kids at some point. We've got plenty of it and we want to share it forward so that they can decide what they want to do when they get it. Because not all of my sons have the same interest as mom in real estate.
Right. But the beautiful thing is, if you simply hold on to it till you die, they can decide to sell it the next day and they won't pay any tax.
Yeah, I love that. I love that opportunity for them. And I just recently heard that there was a change too, whereas if they inherited one of the mom and dad's primary residence and turned it into their primary residence, that they could actually keep mom and dad's original tax basis. That is something they'd want to talk to a CPA or a tax accountant about, correct?
Yeah, because that's going to be state by state specific. And where it's going to really have its value is in property taxes. So out where you're at especially, you'd like to inherit it at your parents' basis because of their low property tax. Exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I share that because one of the things that I loved when I heard you interview earlier was that you shared a Bible verse, right? That was very specific to something that touches my heart, which is we need more than one person in our life, right? We do so much more with 2 or more. Please share more about that.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And why is that important to you?
Well, we're saying Ecclesiastes 3:9.
Yes.
2 people are better than 1. Why? Because they get more done by working together. And that was one of the first verses we made our boys memorize as they were doing chores together. And of course, we told them later that the importance of that was because each one of you could do a chore, or we could have the 2 of you work together and we could give you 3.
Yes.
And you'd still get them done.
Yes.
Big win for us. So, but it's absolutely right. There's a synergy in working together. There's actually an African proverb that I love that speaks to this as well. And it's actually all through the Proverbs in the Bible as well. If you want to go fast, go by yourself. But if you want to go far, go together. Because that accountability, that cooperation, someone who brings something to the table that you don't have, makes you a much more complete investor. And so we talk a lot, I'm sure you do too, about building your team. You've got to be a smart investor. But it's more important that you have a great realtor on your team, that you have a great title company, a great accountant, a great QI, because there is no way that you have the ability, or any of us have the ability, to do all of it. We may have the skills for some, but that's when you gather people around you that can make up for your weaknesses, and whose weaknesses you can help make up for. And that's when you're really going to be humming.
Yeah. Yes. I just loved that when I heard that, because that is the basis for our real estate business, right? We're a real estate family and we all do our specific tasks within the business. And I loved when you shared that verse because it's true. Like you're going to be part of that decision. It's not just Lori the realtor. It's like, hey, my investor, you need to talk to the 1031 exchange guy because he knows all the 1031 stuff. I don't. I only know the basics. And there's a lot to it. I heard you say there's like 7,000 or something.
Oh, well, the statute itself, yeah. Welcome to everything government. The statute's like one page, but there's 8,000 pages of case law that surround it. Yeah. Down here in the South, we call that being 2 miles deep in a 2-foot wide creek.
I love it. I love it. Hey, Dave, if there's one thing you can offer to a new family that said, you know what, I want to do a 1031 exchange, what would be that one thing that you'd say, do this first?
The very first thing you need to do is get a hold of the QI. They're not going to be officially involved until you close your sale. But if you've got the right QI, they are your guide. You know, they're the Gandalf that takes you through Mordor. They're the guide that leads you through the wilderness. They're the ones that know these little tips and tricks that can make your experience not just great this time, but can set you up for success ongoing. And I would say that's the more runway you can have, the better. And that's going to mean involving that person ahead of time. Because then, too, they can interface with your realtor so that your realtor can have a better focus on what your replacement needs are going to be. They'll have a better, your accountant is going to have a better idea, and your financial planner of how to position the rest of your portfolio. See, it just builds. But I would say if you're thinking at 1031, that's probably the place to start.
Yeah. Thank you. I love that. So, Dave, where can they find you and know all about 1031 exchanges? Because there is so much more. Like I could have asked you a million other questions. There's so much more and so many interesting pieces of it. Where can they find you? How do they get to know you?
Absolutely. Well, we've been in this for a long time. And so I'm leading up to where we're going to send you. We saw that there was a ton, just like you know, there was so much campfire knowledge that was lost in the last great recession. So many realtors went out of business. So many investors lost all their money. And honestly, now the greatest buying demographic, Lori, that you're going to hate hearing this, they were in middle school during the last real estate crash. While you and I were slugging in the trenches, they were in middle school. So nobody knows about 1031s. So we created an education portal that has everything you'd ever need. And it is at the1031investor.com. And if you go there, you'll find calculators, articles, enough YouTube videos. I think at last count we had like 37 of them, all guaranteed to keep the demons off your dishes and cure you of any kind of insomnia. But anything you want to know about 1031 exchanges, we've put there for easy access. And that's the best place to get a hold of us. And never hesitate to ask questions.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. And I'm going to tell you this. I found him on Facebook and I asked him a question and he answered it for me ASAP. So I'm just telling you, you can find this guy anywhere and everywhere, and he's going to have a great answer for you. So, Dave, I truly appreciate you coming on, spending some time with us. Thank you. Thank you.
That's awesome. I feel like this is going to be one of those TikTok watch parties where now everybody's going to show up at my house for a party next week. Actually, if you can make it to Reddington Shores by midnight tonight, we're going to have a beach party as the hurricane goes by. come on down. Let me know.
Oh my God. I love it. I would love to. I would love to.